I would like to ask Jennifer, then what is your position about this spectacular economy? Like, do you think that we need to use the same logic of this economy, or, and like, what do you mean that when you say whether it works or not? I mean, for me, like Nicolas Briot, the relational aesthetics, although, I mean, there's many critical points, but it's like thesis which influence the whole discourse in 90s and until now, whether you criticize and whether you agree with. So, yeah.
The question actually would be what Jennifer's position towards these spectacular values. So you take Madonna's position and talk about same artists, or?
No, I mean, for me it's really, I mean, I'm just figuring this out. I'm sorry, but it's happening right now. Like Prince last week took all his fan sites. He legally he's gonna take them all to court last week. So I mean, I'm just figuring this out myself. I don't know what I think it's enough to say that's how it works, and then we've got to figure out, okay, now how can I form a resistance through this? They're talking about, we want our profits, right? Prince says, I want my profits. I don't want Google to benefit from people clicking on my name. And Madonna doesn't want the paparazzi to benefit from her going jogging. You know, the writers don't want the Hollywood studios to benefit from people renting out the movies, you know, in DVDs or downloading them. But I don't know, I'm not, you know, Artforum has already sold all our articles to, my reviews are for sale on Amazon.com for $5. And I asked about that, and then I was told, so what do you want, your 2 cents every month or something like this, you know? So yeah, I mean, there's no way for art critics to form a union. You can just forget that. I mean, also with the web, it's divide and conquer, right? Because it's based on circulation. So all our old forms of politics where we get together and create collectivities, you can just forget that. Because the values are based not on the same people getting together, they're based on things moving around and appearing in different places. So my only solution here is to write a completely stupid people-like report about Pinot and let people know this is what this guy owns. Like, he owns Le Monde, okay? Part of it, not the whole thing. But so, and to put in like a reader like or a thinker like Jacques Cousteau, who he would never appear on this page. It's just because they don't know who he is. They let me write that, and I'm like, excelente. So this is I'm just trying to slip in little bombs into the circulation. That's my response, really. Slip in some intelligence and slip in some bombs. But again, I'm not working in this also a national context, right? I don't write really about German artists. The first Canadian artist I ever wrote about was Ken Lum. Was in, I don't know, 3-4 years ago in Stockholm. The Canadians never asked me to write about him. I mean, I'm just not in this kind of, I don't know, this type of criticism. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying this is how an international part works. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but the writers are obviously doing the old-fashioned, we want, first off, we want the profits of our labor, of our spectacular labor, and we're forming together and we're striking. But I don't know if that works so well. I don't know. I mean, they're winning insofar as the shows got off the air, so they destroyed the spectacle, right? So that's good. But I can't do this as a critic. They'll just hire someone else. Who cares about Jennifer Allen in the end, you know? I mean, there's one who is really much more beautiful and does striptease, so she can write for me.
So far in all 3 presentations we kind of listened to a number of external demands towards art criticism today. I mean, there's a demand for this quick and very often entertaining news about what's happening in the art world. There's a demand for interviews rather than in-depth analysis, etc., etc. What would interest me if we try to at least, as a mental exercise, unthink these external factors? What would you today imagine the ideal role of a critic to be? What would be your ideal imagination of this profession? What is it that you would desperately want to do, because it's extremely important in this process of shaping public discourse or contributing to the public discourse. So try to think it from try to think about this issue from a different perspective. Not to say external circumstances and the neoliberal condition we are part of demand of us do this and that. And Jennifer, you articulated it a couple of times. I'm just desperately trying to make money to survive.
Yeah, but it's true. You know, we just don't. I'm sorry, but all the
it's
artists.
It's not criticism. I just want to reverse the discussion and say, okay, if these were not demands, if we didn't need to desperately make our living, what would be the
I don't know. I don't know what world that is. I mean, unfortunately, it is that way. It's like you have to. I mean, it's really quite frightening that the critics really do play a role. I'm sorry, but for me, they do play a role. I've seen it in the articles I've written about people. But I mean, I don't care. It's not about making. You're not going to make tons of money anyway. But the point is that a lot of people are making a lot of money through highly illegal activities. Most of the things that are done financially in the art world are completely illegal in other markets. Like the Financial Times cannot open its own stock exchange with its prime advertisers as the top value, which is Frieze does, right? It opened a fair with its prime advertisers. Like this is insane. You cannot do this in the financial world. So you know, that's where my money complaint comes from, not from I think I should just make tons of money. It's not. I really, it's a political context also, but I think, and I think that it's for me just getting in these names, trying to put these little political bombs in there, and believe me, lots of people will have Googled Jacques Hassoun. Okay, I made some money for Google, but at least maybe someone read Jacques Hassoun. I don't know. But what do you think? For you, I mean, I don't know if there's how can you think an ideal?
Because
there is not an ideal situation. It's always if you take Jennifer in her career and us as writing for a daily newspaper, I'm very happy with my job, you know. Otherwise I do something else. It's not because somebody demands me to write every day something else, then I would stick at Metropolis M or do something else, you know. That's what I like. And I like to do something that somebody demands from me sometimes, because it brings new thoughts. And I think, okay, never thought about this. Good idea, let's do it. And then, you know, after a week or two, it ends in a couple of great reviews or analyses. And I'm basically a Dutch art critic. I'm not international, and it's okay, you know. I don't mind, because I'm involved in Holland. I like that. My intention is to make the art world in Holland just this 1% better, because otherwise, that's the only idea I'll have. And otherwise, I like to, well, you know, I have this paper. Come on. Thousands of people writing articles made by me. Great, you know. I really and I can do it every day. It's fantastic, you know. It's just, you know, I'm sitting behind my laptop thinking something, and you know, there's a whole machinery by publishing this thought.
So there's not so much to complain about.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not about complaint. It's about what's the ideal situation. This is for me the ideal situation. It's not the situation of Jennifer. Is for me because I like to have some background of readers and you know, an art scene in which I am part of, although I am maybe an outsider. And I like that combination. I don't like to write in Berlin about something in Canada of a Chinese artist. I don't care.
I mean, I think it should. Most newspapers really have to fight to get these pieces in at all. I think that should be clear too. Yeah, the Süddeutsche, I know the Holger Liebs, the cultural, he has your job. It's like he has to fight to get in stuff about contemporary art. Otherwise the whole, and these are really good papers, this is the exception. There are not many papers I can do the digest from, because most of them say, this is culture for them. Jennifer Lopez is pregnant. Roman Polanski is doing a new film. This is culture for them. And La Vanguardia, which is on top of that from Barcelona, you'd think they'd have more interest in their own culture since they have a minority language. This is what they publish in their cultural pages. They don't publish stuff about shows in Barcelona. That's very, very rare.
Yeah, of course, that's a good thing, of course. No, I think for me, like, if you're asking for the ideal situation, it would somehow be if it would not have to be political. It's a shame to say that, but I would be very happy if there is no need to think in a political way when I'm writing my text. Needed to think in a strategical way, but like just to be able to ignore all that and to write some kind of reaction on what I could see in a show, for example. I think this would be the thing that would make me happy in a way, or this would be for me the ideal situation. Also, not to be forced to necessarily change something with my text, or necessarily aim on some strategical tool which I wanted to give maybe to in order to change maybe the political situation of the exhibition, or of a museum, or of a discourse and so on. But if you can just go to a show, or maybe to an atelier, it seems better not to know the artist. If you just can go to a show, you don't know the curator, you don't know the artist, if it's possible, a little far away from your home, so you will never know the artist or the curator, and then you just write your text about it. I think this is what would make me happy, and unfortunately I sometimes can do that. My newspaper allows me to travel quite far, so I can go sometimes to at least to London. It's already far enough. Usually sometimes I go a little bit more far away, and then I can write my text, and this is really what is making me happy. Of course, my everyday job is a little bit different, because as you said, contemporary art also is only a part of it, and I'm not only writing about contemporary art, but also about classical art. So my job is more an organization, more an organizer of the texts, because we have a lot of texts about artists in newspapers, maybe 15 every week, so I have to organize that and maybe write one of them, of these 15. So the rest of the time I spend my time by all being political and strategical, and of course choosing, as you were emphasizing on, to choosing what we are writing about, what we are not, trying to keep back all the desires that are coming from museums, artists, galleries, whatever. Writers, sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, another question?
Yeah, but I came up with another one. Rutger was saying that he sees the critic as being part of the art world, but being an outsider. Jennifer has a lot of different aspects in her career, writing different types of texts. And I was wondering, for example, with working for these catalogs, working with artists a bit more, do you see your position different from Rutger, so being in the art world but being an outsider, or do you see it more as a collaborator, maybe sometimes?
I think I should, I don't want to, maybe I sound so negative. I think I'm really just tired from this cold. I really do love to write about art. And I love to meet the artists and talk with them. It's really, I said that at the beginning, you're discovering things that you just couldn't think before. And that is so exciting. And then every day, I get to do research on completely different things. Again, my reasons about the market are really political, because there's a huge amounts of money taken out of France, for example, put into Venice. That really bothers me, things like that. But on a daily level, I mean, it's really, I don't feel like an outsider. I feel like someone who's really privileged. It's so nice when you write for an artist, and then they, again, I'm not judging their work, so my texts are not, it's about epistemology, and every artwork really, and every artist has a certain logic in their work. It's very, very structured, and it's a very delicate kind of ecosystem, like little butterflies and so on, because they're interested in, you know, why are glasses round like this? Why? Why not have square glasses? You know, and they could do a whole lifetime of work on that. And you can imagine the theoretical implications of that. Maybe I should give one example of really something that really blew me away. I mean, it wasn't a big thing, but it really blew me away. It was, oh God, now I forgot his name. Oh God. Sorry, I'll come across his name. Anyway, he did this work where, you know, it was a song, a different song, but the people who were playing the song were spread out. So you had one guy tapping a wood thing and someone else singing and then feet dancing all over the place. Now I'm thinking Mark Beerless on. Anyway, I thought this was so, and he also did a piece where you see someone talking and then you hear someone talking and you see someone typing out the words that are being spoken with the fingers. And I just thought this was so brilliant because he's showing that the body is this incredible translation machine. You know, that I can hear this, it's a and my fingers know how to dance with that and make it, that's amazing. So he sees the body as this thing that's always translating different stuff. Now this is a major different way of looking at the body because most artists in the 20th century looked at the body as a unity, not as different parts that had to translate to talk with each other. They saw it as a unity, and I think the Wiener Aktionisten are the best example that they had to destroy. This bourgeois little subject that they wanted to destroy. It's David Saint-Guy. And David Saint-Guy sees the body as, well, he doesn't really understand how that all just works together. I mean, this is quite brilliant, right? So this is something I never thought of before. I never had the opportunity to think that. It's only thanks to his works, and I will always remember that. I mean, that's just a great experience in your life, to think a new thought.
Who has a question?
Maybe, would you change, you said, like, you don't judge about the artworks, and in your writing, you know, it's not about what is bad and what is good, but actually why you're talking about this amazement of learning new knowledge about body from David J. Inky. So works, actually you give what is your like standard, what you value in art and what you think it's good art. I think that's about like how art produce new knowledge, how it change your perception. And like you can
say good. I don't say this is good. I mean, I don't say that in the review. I just think that's boring. If you say something's good and bad, that's when thinking ends.
I mean, you don't need to literally say it's good or bad, but you already imply in your writing when you write. I mean, when you get impulse to write about works. So I wonder whether like you can talk about kind of what is the value of art for you? What is the standard that you you use to appreciate or write about art? It's not just relatives. I mean, I believe there is certain standard for your judgment about or evaluation of art and your choice of the subject or subject of writing.
I don't know if I could say that I would ever like say that there is a standard, and when it doesn't fit into that standard, then I would say it's a bad work of art. But I mean, there are like I have got quite a reduced vision of this world, I must say, and there are some things I can understand and others I cannot, and of course, it would be a little bit unpolite to say that everything I cannot understand is necessarily badly done. So, I mean, it's a possibility to do it, but I would not necessarily do it. Certainly not if the artist is still alive. Of course, it's a little bit different, and that's why I like to write about dead artists. If he's dead, it can be a little bit unfair, and you always know, usually dead artists, when they are still on shows, they have a huge community of fans. And to some extent I like to deal with these fans, and sometimes you can easily provoke them in an extremely funny way. So I remember, like, I was 1 year ago, it was my hugest amount of letters to the editor I ever got. I was really sick, and I went to a von Schiele exhibition in Vienna. And I just felt sick in the morning, and I was like, worse than Jennifer, and I had fever and everything, and I suddenly felt like these drawings so close to my physical state. So I did write an article about how Schiele's drawings are linked to all kinds of medicine I was taking in all the time. And so it was quite a funny article, I think. For me, at least, it was funny to write. I would call it, I was writing about neo-citron aesthetics, which is a thing you take when you are sick. And the people were really shocked about that. And it was funny to do that, because, I mean, for Schiele anyhow, he wouldn't care anymore, I think he doesn't care anymore. So I was only dealing with some kind of discourse, which suddenly I felt that it was such a heavy and such a blocked and such an absolutely established discourse that by only using some abnormal words, which were not normal within the discourse of Schiele, you could already, like, open something. So I was quite happy about that. But of course, if you do that with an artist that is still alive, maybe if you do it, I mean, with Richard Serra, I probably wouldn't care. But if you do it with a young artist who is maybe having his first show and so on, you say that it's an volume aesthetics or something like that. Of course, this is some kind of a shock. So if you do that, you have some kind of responsibility in not doing it, because maybe you don't understand. So I'm much more. I have to retain myself when I'm writing about living artists, except if they are absolutely famous. That's why I'm always a little bit jealous about my colleagues who are writing about films. You know, all these Hollywood films, you will never, ever in your life you will meet Brad Pitt, probably, or maybe for an interview, but you will not remember what he did write about in Zurich-based newspapers. So they can always, like, really feel free to follow also their ideas. That's wonderful. That's a little bit with the arts. In Revenge, someday then you meet the artist, and maybe he's saying, oh, once you were writing about me. Of course, you don't remember, because you don't remember that you ever did so, because when you write so many articles through the year, but in a way you feel, I don't know, you don't feel good actually in this moment. You feel bizarre. If somebody's coming to you and saying, oh, you were writing such a nice sentence or article about me and you don't remember, in a way you feel bad about it also. No, I feel a little bit bad in a way. So that's not really good either. What is that?
I forgot.
It's not part of that.
It's not?
You need to entail this kind of bad feeling.
Yeah, I should actually. I should write something about that. Yeah.
We in the art institutions are haunted by this political demand of visitorship numbers. And this is something I would like to ask, a very, very banal question. I can assume that, especially for dailies, a number of readers is important, but to which extent do you know who the readers are? You Rutger, hinted on that when you said that it's fantastic if people who are not necessarily part of the art world, in between news from abroad and economic news or sport news, was it, just browse through this. But is this something you need to take into consideration to make articles such that they could reach beyond the art world?
No.
Sounds very promising.
No, well, let's say that when I write for the tabloid on Thursday, special issue
The
on
culture
art,
supplement.
the supplement, then I know that especially people from the cultural world will read it, and it's made for them. And I think I know that people who read the newspaper will eventually read some of the art stuff on the newspaper page. And maybe they are interested because sometimes there's a link. It's very pragmatic. There's a link between a small article on this page and the supplement. So you can try to to move the reader around in your newspaper.
Jennifer, is it known who's reading CNN Herald, for example?
Yeah, that I hate to say it, but that gets the most hits on the website. People click it to see the. I'm not privileged to say how many people use the website. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I can't say that. But the news is considerably less. But people stay a long time. They can actually see who reads this is also quite frightening. You have a lot of anonymity, maybe not with the artists, but they can read because there's certain services, so you can see who read the pieces and how long they stayed online. I don't think that, I also should make clear, it's not like I chose this. You just get involved in something, you're just doing your life and you get involved in something and then you try to figure out later what is it you're actually doing. But, yeah, I think I'm going to become a national critic now and write in German only.
But it's also depending on, because your question is almost the same as her question. It has to do with each other. I started writing on let's say the big artists when I was the first articles in Metropolis and Jackson Pollock. He was my hero. He still is my hero. But by writing about on art, I got more interesting in the thinking about art. So that's why I am involved in art politics and academy politics, etc. But also in every kind of visual thing around us. So what I write now, still on Jackson Pollock, but also on television images or on just tiny little things which are called in Dutch alledaagse kunst. It's just once a week a small part of the paper which is exploring things around us, but by an artistic view, or by some or by the ear of somebody who is writing about classical music. But he's listening to, when you turn on the computer, you get 3 tones composed, I thought, by Eno. I didn't know, but and he's analyzing it as was it the piano concert of Mozart. So, and if you do, if you're interested in not only art, but in artistic things, or in artistic view, or in artistic analysis, or whatever, I think you can get maybe another audience. I don't expect it, but it's not only the art world that would read something like this, because I'm also writing about Hans Marcus, But I compare her with A.R. Pen. So I made it's very funny. It's weird, but on the other hand, it could be interesting because there is maybe some combination. So it's not because I like another audience. I just like it. It's sometimes very good to write something about very bad painting. Not to make very negative, but just to why do we don't like it? Why? What's happening? Is it whatever?
But see, to me, you're using a bit of this. I recognize a similar logic in trying to. When you were talking about that the reviews will appear with sports, with finance, and that there are many ways that people could come into them, and it's really about trying to, maybe give a second life or some kind of existence to things, or how to say, a verbindung, like bind it into their lives in a way that might be unexpected. And I think it's it's a similar logic, but in the context of a newspaper, which is really this physical object you get every day.
Anybody urgent question?
Yeah. I have a question. I mean, getting back to this kind of question of values and how values exist, and I appreciate the ethic of wanting to say that one doesn't come with a preset set of values, and one wants to approach a work in terms of how it affects you, and that being a sort of a mode of writing, or a mode of thinking about work that people bring in. But I think that just like with the journalist who says, well, no, to be a journalist you have to be objective, that if you talk about that too much, you then start to abdicate the responsibility that one has in terms of making certain things visible or other things invisible, or understanding how, say, as a Western journalist versus a non-Western journalist, you have very specific, your point of view as a Westerner is inherently in your work. I'm afraid that privileging that ethic, or confusing that ethic with the outcome or impact of what you do, starts to make us forget about the responsibility of what you do. And I think I'm less interested in talking about criticism as a process that reveals things, but more as something that produces things. You don't reveal value in a piece, you attribute value to it. And it's by putting it into discourse that value takes form or is expressed. So I guess I'm sorry, I've been thinking through a few things that I've been thinking throughout the night, but I'm also thinking about this in relation to this kind of the seen and heard phenomenon, and this thing about the value being circulation. It's not a lack of value or an absence of values, but it's this ultimate value commodification. That's what value is circulation within capitalism. So it's so I think that's where, for me, I started to think, well, this is actually very important to talk about what people's values are in terms of what kind of work you're asked to write about, what work you choose to write about, what it is that your work does in the world, is all the more important because of this kind of question of circulation, where the value for the market is to pretend there's no value, because all that matters is you're creating new value by creating these appearances, by linking these new things so everything is always new again, right? And so I don't know. Within all of that, I just feel maybe you guys one more chance to talk about what you think is important to write about right now, or what a responsibility of critics could be. That beyond, I don't mean so much like what would be your ideal day to go to the museum as a critic and how would you get to write, but considering what's going on in the world right now and places that you live, like what is important for a critic to do, because critics are important, that you do have an impact.
Almost eating it. Sorry. I can't think. Maybe I should. You're talking actually about different values at once, about the values we could have as critics entering an exhibition, seeing some kind of artwork. That's what you were starting with, and when ending up with the value we add to some extent to an artwork by writing about it. So, if I understood well, at the end the question was more like was more concerning what you choose to write about, not how is our position when we write about it. I don't know if this is right. So I think choosing essentially is the most political act you do on a daily newspaper is like choosing your topics in a way, of course. So because writing about something always adds some value to it. Even if you write that it's bullshit, it still adds because you in a serious newspaper, if you write about a topic, it means that this topic is to be taken seriously. So I don't know. Of course, this is a very political question in a way. It's concerning as an editor, which I am always like linked between many different. I'm in a complicated power situation in a way. I have my own ideas about certain things. I have, of course, my editing board, which is also my boss and the boss of my boss and so on, which they have some ideas about art and about what should be in the newspaper too. And I have readers maybe, and I have collaborators and so on. So it's quite a complicated situation. But at the end, finally, I can always try to bring through my decision. Let's take, for example, a famous example was the skull of Damien Hirst. When the story of the skull came out, in the Süddeutsche Zeitung, they were just bringing like a whole page about it with this beautiful skull in the middle. And I was thinking that, and I had like maybe 20 or 30 people offering me papers about this skull. And I was like thinking, it's to think that it's properly calculating with me as a newspaper, reacting on it. So it's like it's a media game in a way, what Damien Hirst did. And so I said, yeah, I mean, we are the Neue Zürcher Zeitung. I just would like to ignore it. Maybe when it's sold, we bring a note about it. Of course, in a way, this was a wrong decision. Of course, because it's also, to some extent, it's news also. This skull is some kind of news, it's information for the readers. So of course my boss was saying, but we need something about the skull and so on. That what I was, nobody from Switzerland, I was just saying, yeah, I know I don't have time to write about it, and then nobody offered me something, so... and then finally, in a way I waited for like a different point of view on it. And I didn't have time myself because it came out in the same time as all the competitive shows of the summer were running, so like Wenigpenal and all this kind of, I really didn't have time to do my own. But then finally, a collaborator from Austria, we were just having it, offered me maybe 2 months later something about the skull in contemporary art and how it's linked to art history. And it was quite a little bit funny, and also showing that this skull in a way is a very old-fashioned idea, and that it was absolutely necessary that it was a skull, it couldn't be something else, and so on. So finally I had like the text I wanted to react to it. But of course, as you can see, this is not the, I cannot only have for many things it's not sufficient to have a position. You also need to be like yeah, you have to bring it through. And this has a lot to do with politics, I think, within newspapers too, certainly for this kind. I don't know if this answers the question. Maybe you have different experience.
The same experience, but added with some other. Because what I like, because I'm an art critic and an editor, so I can program articles in the Volkskrant. And of course there's some kind of agenda. Sometimes some things you have to do. It's a national newspaper. Come on, it's already, yeah. But on the other hand, what I very much like is that freelance critics with who we work are enthusiastic. So I have contact with them maybe every day, and we talk about a lot of things. And if somebody reads something of which he is very enthusiastic, and I don't know who this artist is or whatever, and he makes it clear to me, understandable, and makes me enthusiastic, I think, okay, you have to write it. So that and then there is no negotiation needed. Then it could be written the next day. And that's what I like most by writing myself. You know, there is a need, an urge to make this text about whatever, and it's mostly about art, but in a very broad way. But there is no, you know, there are almost no borders in it. Then just make a good text in which you make something clear which is not yet written in whatever circumstances or context. And try to look for something new, even if it's something very tiny somewhere in a cellar. Could be important. Not every day, but
I think for me there's also a context behind it. I mean, I'm not an editor. I usually drive my editors crazy. So, but I'm trying, I picked up that story, for example, about the skulls. And there was a choice because I thought, oh, you know, I didn't make it clear the connection with the war, but I thought that for me it was really important. You see all these skulls all over the place, also in kids' things like baby socks, and she made this also clear in the piece. And that's why I picked that. I just thought it was something visible in the everyday that should be explained. But I think when I'm picking reviews, when I'm doing catalog essays, the artist asks me, you know, when I'm doing reviews, I'm doing the choice. I also have this context in the back. You know, there are certain rules. A gallery can't be reviewed. You have to wait at least 6 months for the same gallery. Again, they don't want the repetition. They don't. If they did a piece on the artist, then they don't want it. Again, there has to be enough time passed for them to write about this artist or to write about the gallery, because otherwise it would seem too, unobjective. Yeah. So, but when I'm making my choice, I'm really, well, first it has to do with my education. I had a really sort of, kind of left-wing education, actually with a lot of Europeans who were refugees from the war who came to Canada, and their whole thing was anti-state. They were very critical of the state. And now, some have completely turned around because the state is crumbling and you see certain forms of community. But for them, the state was basically, the possibility always of totalitarianism, right? In whatever form you want to see. So I did all my reading in, Foucault and Kant and Hegel and blah, 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 all in terms of a critique of the state and a critique of the collusion between capitalism and the state, right? Sort of class-oriented. Then I'm very much influenced by the post-colonial. I mean, I just read everything by Trinity Minha and Bell Hooks, and so the whole issue of identifying yourself in terms of race, sexuality, gender, and this was really, really important for me. And then migration and so on. And I think those choices, those readings obviously have influenced me and remain important choices. But I also realize I can't just do the anti-state, pro-minority position. This just doesn't work so much anymore, So it's become extremely complex. So then you have to rethink, and then you're looking that the art will help you find some answers, like this answer about the body. Because if you say, we are women and this is how we want to be recognized politically, then you're also identifying the body as a unity, right? There's something common between all these women, or all these, workers, or all these African Americans, right? There's a body there, they're talking about something visible in the body, right? So if an artist like David Sinke shows me, well, there's this coherence of the body is not there, then I find that important. Now, unfortunately, I don't always have the time to make the link, but for example, when I wrote about Carson Heller, I discovered that this was just before the bombings in London, the exhibition, and I discovered that this carousel is really comment dit-on, the Crusades. It was a game. It was a, what's that called? When people do things with horses, horsemanship game, or what's that? There's an adjective for this. I don't know. Anyway, doing things with horses, like special riding, equestrian. And it was a game that these Christians invading Europeans, murdering people, saw, and then they took it back with them. And then, you know, it was important for me to say, you know, they saw Muslim men practicing this game, and just to say that. And this is from the Crusades, and then you have this bombing, you know, a couple months later. That was very important for me. I don't think many people do know that the carousel is from, you know, Arab and Persian culture. So of course I can only go so far. I can't go, oh, the Iraq, you know, I can't do that in a catalog essay. I have the same problems, right? I'm writing for Gagosian Gallery. So, but I figure if I can get the word Muslim into the text, and people, you know, in a very subtle way, but, you know, people are not stupid, too. I mean, you're hoping your reader is clever enough to think about the things. But that would be really that's my sort of heritage. Again, refugees from World War II and from totalitarian regimes came to Canada, became professors. They could speak incredible amounts of, I mean, really 9, 10, 11, 12 languages. And that, for me, gave me this ethics. You have to learn languages, a whole critique of the state from Hegel to Foucault, then the whole generation of minority literatures. I'm from Quebec, too, so, you know, this whole idea of non-nation state literatures. And then the whole, you know, gender movement, race movement, and so on. But I also realize I have to rethink those, and that's what I'm looking for answers in the art.
I think that's a good moment to thank our guests. Invite you upstairs for perhaps a continuation of informal talks about the responsibilities and about seeking answers in art.